Morning folks, we're back after our little break. It was quite a nice little break. We went for a little trip and we got ourselves back here quite safe and sound after a rainy drive. Anyhow, while I was away, we purchased a little Pam said don't use the word Prezi. It's not a Prezi. We actually bought something from Jim Carroll that I wanted to show you. During some of our other shows, we've been struggling with different dust extractor systems and different things that happen with dust extractors. So this is what we bought. Follow me over here. What we bought was one of these 4-inch quick connect magnetic kits. Now, Jim Carroll down at Carroll's Wood Turning Supplies sent it up to us. He didn't give it to us. We had to buy it, of course. And this is what comes in the pack. On the end of my extractor hose, it comes with this little magnetic platform, and you can't see the whole thing, but it just goes onto the end of the hose. And in the other part of the box is this little piece here. Right, and also it comes with a couple of clamps. That's what comes in the box. Now that will fit one machine. So what I did with it was that I attached it to my dust extractor. My sander, drum sander. So all I've done is I've cut a piece of 100mm plastic tube and attached it to the top of the sander, and the hose just magnetically sits on there. Now, in the past, all I had was a little split in the end of that, and I used to struggle putting it over the top of the connector port for the sander. And now, so much easier, and I can swap that from that to my other machines. The bandsaw for one, the thicknesser for the other, and it's just a matter of undo that and click it back on. So, simple as that. So, if you're in the need to fiddle around with, or stop fiddling around with your dust extractor system, this is a really, really good idea, and it works a treat. So we tried it out and we gave it a bit of a workout. So anyway, I just thought I'd show you that, because dust extracting is always the bane of everybody's life, and somewhere along the line you have to sort of make it simple and easy for yourself. But that little magnetic thing, great little system, particularly when I've got a portable machinery. All my machines on wheels, as you know, and we can move it anywhere we like. So makes life a little bit easier. Anyhow, back to our table. So as you can see, I've got it sitting up on the upside down. I had to put it up on here to put it all together. Now, I put the wheels on it earlier because, you know, well, that's a bit too high and you can't see anything while I'm working up there. So I attached the wheels. Now, I had them on the frame before we actually painted it. So I've got a coat of white paint on it. Okay, so I've undercoated and painted it. And I put a coat of Constantia red oil on the panel. And this is what the panel looks like once it's got the red oil on it. It still needs a little bit more work, but that's not a problem. I can fix that afterwards. But I need to get this assembled and on its wheels to go on with the next bit. So the whole thing, as you can see, looks really, really nice. And that's the underside. Wait till you see the outside. So we've got that all set up, so it's just a matter of now putting it together. Don't want that on there just yet. Now I have my little box of screws. Now, what I have inside here, Pammy just showed you that, I've got these little buttons. Now I made the buttons last week, I showed you that, and I've just rounded over the edges of them. Not last week, the week before I think it was. But I've rounded over the whole thing, so made them look a little bit nicer than just a bit of square timber. And I've pushed them all in. They're only sitting in there. They're not actually glued in. They're just pushed in. And the fact that I've got one in this side and one in that side, and they're pushed apart like that, means that the whole thing's not going to move anywhere. But what it will do, it will hold things and allow movement of the top of the table anyway. Now, I have this gadget here. When I first started drilling the holes, I've actually attached two of the screws here and here. I found that the size of the chuck there didn't allow, because of how close this is, didn't allow me to drill the hole straight. So I've got this thing, and you've seen this before, I've used this in other projects. It's just flexible drill shaft. And so it's just a matter of fitting it in and I can drill my holes. Makes it a whole lot easier to drill the holes. Like so. And a few screws. Now I could use electric screwdriver, but I sometimes like to revert to the older ways, or the traditional ways, as they say. I don't want to drill all the way through. I should have put a piece of tape on the end of the drill bit, but I'm just doing it by feel. So once we get this assembled, then I will, what we have to do is build, excuse my hairy arm there for a minute. Let's get the rest of the screws out of here. Somebody said to me the other day, you don't need that many screws in it. Yes, I do. Joe, you haven't seen how Pam sews.
No, I think the term's over-engineering, but I'd rather that than a Dodgy Brothers build.
Dodgy Brothers, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can get all the screws in there, and then the next thing I need to do is attach the drop leaf. And one of the reasons I've got so many screws in here is because the timber is exceptionally soft. This is not a hardwood that I'm using on the top of the table. I really should do, but it's not a hardwood, and it's quite soft. Believe it or not, it's a Bunnings product. Just make sure I head all the screws. Last one. In future projects, if I make another table, I'll go over the making of the buttons again. The buttons are a really good way of attaching table frames to tops, no matter what sort of top you have. Okay, so my next step now is to attach the drop leaf. Now remember, I did all this last week, a couple of weeks ago. I have my hinges here. Hinge number 1. Hinge number 2. And hinge number 3. Now remember, the problem with these cheaper version hinges was that the screws, or the countersinking on the screws actually didn't match. Didn't match the countersinking in on the hinge, so I had to re-countersink them. That's probably something you're going to have to do if you're going to continue using cheap hinges. I'll just get this in here so that it's held in place. Having them all the screws actually flush with the top makes it a nicer job. So as you're aware, over a period of time it takes you to build your project. There's testing and there's fixing and making sure that everything goes in the right place, and then strip it apart to finish it. You should be able to pull a project apart a little bit every single time. You should be able to pull it apart and put it back together again so that it goes back together exactly how you imagine it should look. And that means doing things correctly to start with. Now I say that because often when I speak to people, I've found that a lot of people, once they get it together, they don't want to get it apart again because they can't, or don't have the confidence to actually put it back together again the way it was when they assembled it the first time. So having things pulled apart and put back together often, it gives you a little bit more confidence in your builds. So that's my flap, which is going to look like that. Now all I need to do now is put the stay on. Now with the stay, we've painted the stay, The stay is actually made out of the same material as the top. It was the offcuts. Now this rag that I'm going to rest this on while I work on this, I don't want to put any paint on the finish. So these have to be screwed back into place. They're the same hinges. Now remember, they're going to carry a little bit of weight, not very much. So that's why I've got two fairly big hinges. On here. Contrast of the brass and the paint doesn't look so bad, does it?
I can see.
Okay, so now this is going to sit in here. I've lined this up so that it lines up with that framework piece there. Now I need one more coat of paint on the panel, so I'm going to put this on here. As you can see, that's not going to work, so I'm going to have to change my screwdriver. A longer one. Okay, so I'm only going to put 2 screws in this for the moment because I have to take it off again later. But I need to get it assembled to show you exactly what's going to happen with the table. So at the moment now, that's our table. It's going to swing across to here. What have I done?
Oh, okay.
I've put it on crooked. Never mind. A little bit of adjustment needed there, so never mind. Right now we'll get it on its feet. Want to drop it. So that will
You can't see that one.
bit hard to see, but that's how it will work.
Very pretty.
Okay.
Well done, Cole. It's beautiful.
So that's our little table, and that's how it's going to look once it's in the thing there. Got a little framework there. It's beautiful.
I'm going to do a really odd thing with the camera and turn it on its
Oh.
head.
Okay, so it needs a little button under there, so I've got to put that on later. So that will just bring the table up so it sits up perfectly flush. There's enough room there for it. But a little rubber button, you can find them in kitchen drawers and things like that. I've got a couple of them there. It's just a matter of putting one on there, and that gives me that extra little bit of height. So it should look quite nice. Okay, so going to push that out of the way. Now I've got a little bit of time up our sleeve, so what we're going to do, initially when we started building this, what I said to you was we were going to build a little caddy. Now Pam wants a caddy so she can put pins and all sorts of bits and pieces in it. And over the last 2 or 3 weeks, what we've been doing is we've been throwing around lots of different ideas on what to do, how to do it, the best way to solve that issue of having pins and things like that at reach and so forth for people who are sewing. Now you remember we built the apothecary chest, which was going to be in our office to hold office paraphernalia. It never got there. It ended up, I just need a piece of rag because I just found something. It ended up
Well, I haven't done
not having any office stuff in it. It's going to go straight to the sewing shelf. so with that in mind, what we had to do was come up with a different idea of using or making a pin caddy. And so this is what we've come up with. So let me push this out of the way. The idea of this is to be mobile, so I can move it. She can move it around her room, and as you can see, it's quite mobile. Now, incidentally, the red oil, it's still got to have another coat of finish on it. The red oil is what I've used. You can see it on the rag. It's after I wiped it all off. That's what it looks like. And that's our red oil. And what that does, it enhances all the red components in the timber. So it looks really, really good. And then I'll go over it with a little bit of Chinese wood oil later on, just to sort of give it that final finished oiled look. So I'm not going to put a plastic finish on it. I'm just going to use oils. That way I can renovate at any particular time I want just by using Chinese wood oil. So let's get rid of all of this. Now, Mr. Squiggle's back. Somebody said to me many years ago when we used the whiteboard, it's Mr. Squiggle time. so it's Mr. Squiggle time. This is what we have. So I'm not quite sure how to do this, but we'll get through it anyway. This is the drawer out of the apothecary chest.
And it's the middle drawer.
It's one of the middle drawers.
So the medium-sized one.
Medium-sized one, yes. Yeah. So what we decided to do was to make some containers that actually go into those that can be lifted out with lids on to house pins and other bits and pieces that sewers use, right? So I've drawn up on my board here the size of the drawer, right? So it's 80 by 200. The space that I have inside it, around here, 238 millimeters by 90 by 80 millimeters deep, right? So that's inside depth of my little cabinet, right? And so it's as you can see, I've just put bits and pieces. There's my measurements. Okay, so 79 wide, 90 by 75. Now, one of the issues that happens with this is getting the things in and out of such a small space. It's not very big. I'm flat out getting my hand in. Pam can get hers in because she's got smaller hands than me. And when I've got 3 of them side by side, that makes it even more difficult. So I'm going to use an idea that I came up with a little while ago, like this. This is a drawer out of one of my other boxes, and you can see I've got a little lifter, a little circular lifter there that you can actually grab a hold of to get out. And hopefully what we'll do is we'll have that, what I'll do is I'll put those little lifters on the sides of the box so she can pick them up like so. Right? Now they take a little bit of effort. This is what they sort of look like. They have a little circle like that with a 1/8 piece of material. with a trench in it, and that fits in there like so, and then we cut it off on the top, right? But what we have to do is we have to round over this edge here.
And it's a bit hard to see, but it is.
That one's square. This one
square.
hasn't got any. This one hasn't got any. Hasn't been rounded over, but that's the beginning of it. When you look at this one here, you can see it's been rounded over inside there. You want it nice and clean and nice and sharp, or nice and neat. Make it look a little bit nicer. So that's what we're going to do with it, right? Now to do that takes a bit of thought. So let me shift those out of the way. And Mr. Squiggle out. Find my pen. So this is my box. This is what I plan to have. So I'll draw a big one. Okay, so there's my three-dimensional box. And now in the side of the box, we're going to have one of those little lifters. You can see that and the one on the other side. Well, you get the picture anyway. Something like that, right? And of course we're going to have dovetails down the side, dovetails down this side. You'll see the pins of course in here, same here, and it'll have a little base in it as well. Okay, now to be able to do this, you're cutting half a hole in a piece of material. So you're basically cutting half that hole. So the simplest way to do it is to do two sides at once. Drill a hole, round over the edges of the hole, cut the thing in half. That gives you the half hole on that one and a half hole on this one, and then cut your rebate for your piece of 1/8 material. Sounds simple? Not really. The first thing we need to do is our measurement. If you divide 238 by 3, you get 79.36, I think, or something like that. So both of our sides on our box, from there to there, have to be 79 millimeters. The height, because we're going to put a lid on it, of our box, is going to be 75 millimeters. Now remember, I have 80 millimeters to play with, and the width of the box from one side to the other is 90 millimeters, because that's the width across our little box, right? So there's the measurements for the box. When we cut and drill for the two sides, what I need is a piece of material that's at least double that size, or a little bit more. So that's 150, so 160, 170, that gives me a little room for error if I have an issue. I'm just going to cut a piece of material that's 79 millimeters wide, and of course we want the grain to run this way, which is an important factor as well. So I have incidentally, the thickness of the material is 8 millimeters. I was going to do 7.5 or 7 millimeters, but that's too small an area to do a 1/8 groove. So I've got 8mm piece of hewn pine, and the width across my piece of hewn pine, oh, we've got heaps of time, is 190mm. So I've got heaps of material to work with. So if I dock those off at 79mm, I might actually dock them off a little wider. I might dock them off at say
85 or something.
80, let's say 80mm or 85mm as Pam's just suggesting, and then we'll dress them down to the right size. Now I've sanded the material, the piece of hewn down to 600, so it's all ready to go. I've squared up the ends, and that's another thing. Over the last week or two, I've had conversations with a number of people who were struggling with the Gifkins jig and not being able to get things to work properly. And in every case that I've spoken to these people, they've found that they're not cutting material square before they start. They're just grabbing something out of the scrap box to actually cut up and use as a tester. And we found that that's detrimental to actually using the jig. So always a good idea to make sure everything is perfectly square. Alright, so let's have a look at this. 80mm. Let's go 85. That gives me a little bit extra. I've got plenty of material there because I can use this part, do 3 of those, and then I've got 3 bits for the other sides. So actually I need 6 bits. So 1 here, 1 there, 1 here, 1 there, 1 here, 1 there. Like I said, it sounds easy, but what I might do is I might actually put a stop on here, because I've got to cut 3 of these. Get my light on. My 80mm. Okay, so they're going to be, where's the drawer? They're going to be 1/2. This one will be the other side. And the same with that, and of course that's a bit wider than we need actually, so that's not a problem. At the moment what we're going to do is we're going to try and work out how to cut material so it's ready to go. Alright, so what I want to do is just make sure everything's perfectly square. I need to trim the ends. I've got saw marks on one end, so I might just trim that off. Now I've got plenty of width at the moment because what happened there? One of those has gone haywire. I just want to trim off the end.
saying one of them's not quite square.
It's not quite square. And like I was just saying to you now, 2 seconds ago, just make sure everything is perfectly square.
You can just see, I don't think the laser shows very clearly, but you can actually see where the lines show the discrepancy.
Okay, now just check for square. Beautiful. Okay. Now this is how this works. It's a neat little trick. Let's find halfway. Now I've got room to play here, so I'm going to find the centre. It's 180. 189. What's half of 189? 94.5. Check that. 94.5. See, I went to school, I know my maths. Well, sort of. Find the centre of that. Find the centre of this, which is a 75. Oh, use the right side of the ruler. It's 85, which is 42.5. Check that. Right on. Okay. Just need to find this. What was that measurement I had there?
4.5, I think.
94.5. It's okay, folks, I haven't gone to sleep.
Yeah, but they have coal.
I had a student here the other day, and for the last 50 odd years that I've been doing woodwork, whenever I try to measure anything, I would take the number and then I'd divide it by a couple, and then try and work out this measurement here and that measurement there. And he said to me, he said, well, have you got a ruler that's got a 0 in the middle of it? And I thought, you know, I have. I didn't realise it, but actually it works a whole lot better than trying to sort of measure a little bit here, a little bit there. I've been using it as a stirring stick. It's a for a paint stirrer, basically, because I thought, why would you have a 0 in the middle of a ruler? Well, of course, for this exact reason.
Yeah.
With 0 there, you can go either way.
So thanks, Peter.
So thanks, Pete. It was real handy. What was the other measurement I had here? It's at 42.5. This works a treat.
I didn't know being the camera person meant I had to be proficient in maths, but obviously it is.
Okay, so we have our centre. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to drill a hole through the centre of that, do that on all those three, with a Forstner bit. Now, I made another jig. Now, I made this some time ago, and how this works, this is a jig, so I'm going to double side tape that to my piece of timber so that I can run my round over bit against, or the bearing of my round over bit against the jig. So it'll fit inside and it'll run around here. Now the idea of that is so that I can line up, once I've drilled the hole, I can line it up and make sure that I've got it centered when I do it. All right. What I have to do is I have to work out what's the best size for this hole. Now I've got a number of these jigs. This one here is 35mm and this one here is 32mm. And I think the 32mm one would be adequate for this here because it's such a small space here, because we're going to have to trim it up anyway to get it to fit right. So what I'm going to do is I'll do it at 32mm and I'll show you how that little jig works. Okay, Forstner bit, 32mm Forstner bit, over to the drill press. Now I don't know how far we're going to get with this, so it was just a wing and a prayer to work out exactly where we were for today's show, but here we are. Now what I might do, line that up. To have that in the middle. Might be the best thing to do would be clamp that in place. See what we've got. Okay, so there's my hole. What I need to do is I need to round over those top and bottom edges before I go too much further. So let me drill the others. Won't take a second. Just using the point of the force a bit, lining it up with the centre of the drill. A bit hard to see here. Check that before I drill it. Not quite right. It's better. You hear that little crack as the last bit came out. That little piece there. It still came out okay. It's not a problem.
It sounded bad though.
It sounded a bit worse than it was, yes. Let's see what I'm doing here. Not quite right. Okay, now to round over those holes. This little plug, if I set that plug on there in the hole, which is a 32mm plug that I made before when I made the thing, a double-sided tape that to my piece, take the plug out, I can then run the router around the edge and run the bearing on top of here. Now, you might say that seems to be a whole lot of trouble for one little round over edge. The problem that you have when you have a round over bit, and I'll show you with a bigger one, is if I'm going to round over, I need to have that flush. You can see on the other side, the bearing will rub on the top edge of the hole. Very thin material, we're only 8mm. When you turn that over, you will have already rounded this outside edge here. So when you turn it over, there's nowhere for that bearing to rub because you've taken that material away, which means you have an uneven hole, round over around your piece there. So it needs to be nice and even. So the only way to do that is to make sure that you have something to support the router bit on both sides when you're cutting it. And the best way to demonstrate that is to show you. Well, I'm not going to do the rough one. I'm going to do the proper one. The router bit that I'm using is not one that we sell, but it's quite a small one because we've only got thin material. It's a TB5. Is that little guy there? this is a neat little trick when I can find the right spanner. Get things tight. I found these plastic making plastic templates actually works a treat. It's just a matter of getting a piece of, this is 6mm, piece of 6mm plastic and drilling a hole in it and then making a plug for it. So this is how it works. You don't need much, just a little bit of double-sided tape. And it's always held the cut.
And then getting the plastic off.
And then getting the plastic off it. So I'm going to, use this. Might work better. Stanley knife.
Yep.
Incidentally, this is the same stuff that you use to hang a mirror on your bathroom wall. I don't want a lot, but we do want it to sit quite nicely. And it needs to sit up a little bit so that the round bit doesn't actually contact . Say woodwork is a game of patience.
A bit like golf, really. Only golf's the devil's game.
I'll get it. And I'm sure everybody has a different way of doing this, or has a fancy way of getting that bit of plastic off there. But any which way you can is best. It's coming. There we go. And now, this is how this works. So put your little plug in the hole. And then we mount that. And as you can see, the plug is actually longer than you really need, but it gives you something to slide it down on so that it lines up nicely. Like so. And now you have that perfectly lined up with the hole. This will wait for a second. So what I want to do here okay, so that router bit is actually going to be too small for for the task. It's not going to rub on there because of the thickness, so the distance from here to the bottom of that is 10 millimetres, and I need something higher. So one way around it, I could put a second bearing on there. And I think that's what I might do, just to show you that it works. Okay.
Derek calls that 0 in the middle ruler a luthier's ruler.
A luthier's ruler.
Yeah.
There you go. I didn't know that. A luthier's ruler. That's the same size bearing. It is too. A luthier's ruler. Now the reason I put the two bearings on there, well, they didn't reach up high enough, but the diameter or the radius of that little half circle there is what I need on here rather than a big one. If I used a bigger round over bit, I'd have a much more of a curve in there, which I don't want. I just want it rounded over just a tiny little bit. So let's try it now. Set the round a bit so that it's flush with the top of the table. Have it. Now it's just a matter of, there we go. You can see that now runs on both of those bearings. Alright, let's have a little cut. There's something I've not done before, so we're going to give it a go. Let me get a pair of earmuffs. So ears on, everybody. And we'll have a little try. So how pretty is that? That's just rounded it over beautifully. Alright, I'll get my ruler out, see if I can save my bits of tape. I'm hoping I can save them. I could cut some new bits, but you saw the problem I had trying to get the cover off it. Pretty much all we're going to get done today is just cutting this, and then over the break, over the week, I will round over the rest of them. You don't need to see it 4 or 5 times. Well, some people do, but I think once on the show is adequate. And here we go, my little plug. So I put the plug in. Now we've already done this side. Put my plug in. Tape down, take the plug out. is on. That was pretty silly, wasn't it? Just did the same side again. We'll try it to get the right side. Okay, let's go this side.
Just bamboozled yourself, did you?
Sorry, what was that?
You just bamboozled yourself.
Yeah. Well, that was a pretty silly effort. Let's try again. Could have stopped me.
I didn't realise you'd done it.
So now I've got it right. So now we have a round over edge on the hole.
On both sides.
On both sides. So all I need to do now is cut it down the middle. Now I can do that on the drop saw. That would get me quite nice. But the thing about that is that it would take a fair bit of material away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it on my bench hook. We're going a little overtime today, not much. So if I put it on my bench hook and cut it with a very narrow bladed saw, so you can see that very narrow bladed saw, I'm not going to lose a lot of material. Now, I'm not too concerned if I get it a little bit skew-if.
Nice.
So now I have,
Oh, that's better. You can actually see the round over.
now I have the two parts. So what I need to do is just dress them up so they're exactly the same. And you can see that's going to be two sides of the box. So they'll have a little lifter on either side. And then all I need to do is make the 90mm parts that we're going to go on the front and back of it. But this is where I'll get up to. I'm just going to trim these up on my drop saw. So I'm just going to take the tiniest little mark off, and it makes everything perfectly square. All I'm doing is trimming off the tiniest little bit. And now they're perfectly square. Okay, so now it's just a matter of running a little rebate from here to here. So on both of those, I'll show you how to do that next week. Okay, so we're going to stop there, and like I said, I'll get both of these, all of these done so that they're all ready for you, and then we'll cut the rebate. I might do the rebate in two of them so that they're done for next week, and I'll also cut up a piece of material. The original material that I showed you there earlier was a piece of rose mahogany, Pammy likes purple, so we're going to use piece of purple heart in each of these. So I have to dress a piece of purple heart up ready for use. It will only be 1/8. Now the 1/8 round bit that we're going to use will be the TSRW4, the Trident Router. So that's 1/8 bit, and we're going to match the timber up to that. So that's what we'll do next week. So I hope you have a good week. Now, if you haven't already subscribed to our show, please do so, and we will look after you with our Sunday shows. So have a good week, everybody, and I will see you all next week.